group of people. We're talking about white people who decide where people live, who decides who lives and who dies. Stated differently, think of it this way. This author actually believes that black men, because they have power, organize the society where they have the lowest life expectancy, where they're the most unemployed, least uneducated, least educated, right?
Yep.
Earn less once you start including people who are incarcerated or drop out after 6 months of unemployment, and have the least amount of social mobility. So it's a nonsensical claim to suggest that the relationship that black men have to black women, when he concedes that we do worse than them in practically every demographic category, organize a system, because that's what we're talking about with patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about with white supremacy. People who organize social systems, that black men deliberately organize a system where they do worse than their female counterpart, is nonsense. It means that black men are literally the stupidest patriarchs in the history of the world. But then he's able to grab people. See, this is what I mean. This is how the racism is working in the subtext of this piece. He's able to grab people's attention because he knows no one cares about what patriarchy or white supremacy actually is. The point of the article is to show people that the violence associated with black men is a threat to black women. So all he has to do to make this clickbait work is to convey to his audience that black men are fundamentally dangerous. That black men, right? And notice how the themes are working. Black men are dangerous, and black men are more important than black women. So when he uses the example of the NFL and says, "Oh, people are willing to boycott the NFL," this is to show, black women's lives don't matter. You see, this piece isn't deep. It's just a way to encode and to bring people along ideas that they're already been socialized with. We already have a movement saying "say her name" because we say that we don't pay attention to black women's lives. So what does he do? He gives an example of the NFL. See, they don't care about domestic abuse, but if one black man doesn't get a job, look at how people are willing to boycott. See, they don't care about the 9 to 12 or 20 black women that are killed per year based on police brutality. They're not going to march for that. But the 300 black men that are killed per year, they'll march for that. See how your lives don't matter? It's a narcissistic ploy that tries to use the positionality of gender and people's sensitivity to it around black women's issues as a locus by which you can dismiss the violence that's happening to black men. I've asked people this several times when I'm at conferences. They're saying, "We don't march for black women." I say, well, what's the context of this? Because 300 black men are being killed a year by police violence. So that means that in any given year, if we march for 2 or 3, there's still 297 black men that we're not marching for.
Yep.
Because they're the greatest victims of this particular type of violence. Does that mean that black women are not important? No. Why is it that the black women who get killed by police brutality somehow outweigh or have to become the focal point of the other 297 black men? And it puts black people in a position where we're arguing about who gets the most attention for dying. This is what I mean. This is why this is not real. This is about stereotypes. This is about pushing an ideological agenda. What group of people in the history of America have argued about whether or not their oppressors recognize them more or less based on them dying? How does that help anybody? But because we have a competition, because we have gender theory, because we have an intersectional calculus that will always say that black women are at the bottom, any asymmetry between black men and women, even if it's in terms of who gets on the news because they were shot or who gets a march because they were shot by the police, ends up becoming an issue about privilege and patriarchy. And this is a very, very dangerous logic, right? Yeah. Because what we're telling people is that even though black men don't have power, there's power in being recognized as victims, right? And this is exactly what intersectional invisibility was set up to do. In 2008, when this article was first authored by psychologists, the argument became, even though we know that black men are the greatest victims of lethal violence in patriarchal societies, the question is whether or not black women are recognized. So recognition has now become the medium by which black women or black feminists involved in these kinds of intersectional battles wield that against the overwhelming amount of death that black men suffer. And this article is just a testament to that. You know, when we look at the history of people writing on black women's death by police, you don't see a very long lineage. And that's very puzzling to me. Because in the 1980s and 90s, when you had the birth of intersectionality, when you have Bell Hooks writing, when you have black feminism really kind of coming into its full fold and intersectionality growing into theory, as a theory, you don't see a large discussion of police brutality by these black feminist authors. To this day, the only one that I could find was Joy James, who talked about black women dying in prison cells once they're arrested. So then I have to ask myself a very serious question. If the argument is that black men are erasing black women because they're not mentioning them being victims of police brutality, why then did these very same authors who we look to as black feminist theorists and intersectionality theorists begin with the question of domestic abuses in Kimberly Crenshaw's work rather than the victimization of black women to state violence? The reason for that is very simple. In the 1980s and 1990s, the argument was while black people, especially black men, may die in the streets because of police and state violence, black women suffer in the homes. So wait a minute, let me just
you say black women suffer in the home, because I got some people, you can't see this, Dr. Kirk, but I got some people in the chat who are just kind of going buck wild. Somebody said, and I just black men are murdering black women in mass.
Really?
I was like, this is a genocide.
So now see but look, this is interesting, right? So and we'll even use very popular data on this. So the claim is that black men are murdering black women in mass. Okay? I'm assuming that the person is talking about perhaps intimate partner violence.
Yes.
In any given year, so say from 2013 to 2016, even if you're looking at the Violence Against Women report that's released every year in this country, the numbers in 2014 was 191 out of victims, killed black victims who knew their offenders, who were wives, common law wives, ex-wives, or girlfriends.
Okay.
In 2015, the number was 211. Right? In 2014, the number was 216. There's over 20 million black women in this country. So then what does it mean to kill black women in mass in that context? You see, this is the problem. The facts simply do not support
do we know how many black men were killed?
Women. I'm sorry, say again?
Do we know how many black men were killed?
During those same years? In 2014, I think the number was like 109. 109, 110. But we see this even in the CDC data. The recent study that caused an uproar a few weeks ago. They used a sample size of 18 states. In 2014, 107 women died. That same year, 68 men died. So in any given year, if you're talking about intimate partner violence or homicide, you're talking about a disparity that could go anywhere between 30 people up to 50 to 70 people. It just depends the year that you're looking at.
Okay.
But again, it's so important for people to understand that in any of these comparisons, if you add black men and black women together, the number is often less than 350 or 400. That is not the mass genocide or homicide of black women by black men. In any given year, the UCR documents that in terms of homicide, there are less than 1,000 victims. Usually the number's around 900 or 800 or 900. Mm-hmm. So again, this is what I mean about context, right? And notice the move that the person in the chat is making. There is no evidence that supports this, because overwhelmingly, black on black crime, in quotes, which is just crime, is male to male perpetrated, and it's usually based on strangers. And that number every year, black men usually die 6,000 to 7,000. Right? I mean, think about that in terms of homicide, which is the number one killer of black men ages 15 to 35. The number one killer is homicide, and we lose 6,000 to 7,000 black men a year. In that same data, you're looking at 800 to maybe 1,000 black women. But if you do 16 years, if you just do the CDC leading cause of death, homicide never comes up as the number one cause. It's from 15 to 24, it's a second, and after 24, it teeters off to third, fourth, maybe fifth.
Wow.
So when these people make these claims about black men, and this is such an important point, when these women make these claims about black men, where are you getting the evidence for the stereotype which suggests that black men's lives are fundamentally incompatible with the living of black women and black children?
Ooh.
Because the only other people who were making those kinds of arguments were white sociologists from 1950 to the 1970s. And this is what's so dangerous about and this is what I talk about in my book. This is what's so dangerous about reading black men based on these gender stereotypes that are masquerading as theory.